Society operates on the assumption that manipulation is always loud. You have been conditioned to believe that control looks like aggressive shouting, overt intimidation, or visible anger. Because of this, you let your guard down when the room is quiet. But this is a dangerous misunderstanding of how power dynamics actually work. For a specific type of neurological wiring, your threat detection system is calibrated for complexity. Your brain is constantly scanning for subtle shifts in logic, analyzing behavioral patterns, and processing deep environmental data. Because you are looking for complex threats, you often miss the invisible traps laid right in front of you. Society treats your subsequent confusion or hesitation as a sign of weakness, but it is not. It is simply a byproduct of an advanced processing engine being fed manipulated data. Your intellect is not failing, it is being hijacked. Today, we are going to decode the 5 ways manipulators gain absolute control over you without ever raising their voice. If you recognize even 1 or 2 of these patterns in your life, you will finally understand why you feel so drained and disoriented in certain relationships. Pay close attention to number 3. It will fundamentally change how you view your own sense of guilt, and it will permanently rewrite the way you see yourself. Method number 1 is the weaponization of the void. Most people despise awkward silence. They react to it with immediate discomfort and will say anything just to fill the quiet. People with high-resolution thinking, however, view silence differently. You do not just hear the absence of noise. Your brain interprets silence as an incomplete data set, a puzzle that must be solved to restore social equilibrium. Psychologically, your brain is driven by a need for structural harmony. When a conversation abruptly stops, your cognitive processing attempts to bridge the gap. Manipulators know this. They do not need to yell to put you on the defensive. They simply ask a probing question or offer a slight expression of disappointment, and then they stop talking. They weaponize the void. Imagine you are setting a boundary or asking a partner for clarification on something they did. Instead of answering, they just stare at you. They offer a blank, calm expression. The silence hangs in the air. Because your brain cannot tolerate the unresolved tension, you start talking. You over-explain your position. You begin to negotiate against yourself. Before you know it, you're apologizing for bringing the issue up in the first place, all while they haven't spoken a single word. Your tendency to fill the silence is not a sign of a weak spine. It is a reflection of a highly active analytical drive trying to fix a broken system. You are trying to create understanding. The downside to this is severe mental fatigue. You end up doing the emotional and conversational labor for 2 people, constantly exhausting yourself to maintain a bridge the other person refuses to walk on. This brings us to a tactic that is even more invisible. Method number 2 is strategic ambiguity. Most people take words exactly at face value. If someone says they are fine, most people assume they are fine and move on with their day. People with depth-level processing cannot do this. You are acutely aware of subtext, tone, and micro-expressions. Your brain's pattern recognition software is always running in the background. The psychological explanation here involves predictive coding. Your brain wants to anticipate outcomes to prevent danger. When a manipulator feeds you vague, ambiguous information, they are purposefully starving your brain of the data it needs to predict the future. They outsource their anxiety onto your nervous system. You see this in the workplace or in relationships when someone sighs heavily and says, "Do whatever you think is best," or "It's fine, don't worry about it." But their body language screams the opposite. You spend the next 3 hours or 3 days agonizing over the interaction. You replay the conversation 100 times in your head, trying to decode the exact mistake you made or the precise expectation you failed to meet. You are entirely controlled by their mood, and they never had to make a single demand. Your overthinking in these moments is actually advanced risk assessment. You are running multiple cognitive simulations to ensure a safe outcome. The heavy downside is that you live in a perpetual state of hypervigilance. You spend your life fighting ghosts that the manipulator intentionally created, draining your focus away from your own goals. But here's the part most people completely miss, and it brings us to number 3. Method number 3 is the empathy hijack. Most people project their own worldview onto others. They assume everyone operates with the same motives and the same emotional baseline as they do. People with systemic empathy operate on a completely different level. You have the rare capacity to hold multiple emotional realities in your mind at the exact same time. Cognitive empathy allows you to construct a highly accurate mental model of another person's pain. Manipulators exploit this by never playing the aggressor. Instead, they gain control by playing the victim. When they present themselves as wounded or overwhelmed, they activate your caregiving neurochemistry. This biological response effectively bypasses your prefrontal cortex, shutting down your critical judgment and your ability to hold a boundary. Think of a time when you were fully prepared to hold a friend or colleague accountable for crossing a line. You rehearse what you are going to say, but the moment you initiate the conversation, their voice softens. They look down. They mention a childhood trauma, a terrible day at work, or how overwhelmed they are by life. Instantly, your mirror neurons hijack your boundary. You drop your grievance. You end up comforting the person who just betrayed you, walking away feeling guilty for even bringing it up. Your susceptibility to this is not naivety. It is an incredibly high emotional bandwidth. You have an immense capacity to heal and understand complex human conditions. The painful downside is that you become a magnet for emotional vampires. You carry psychological luggage that does not belong to you, acting as a free therapist for people who use their trauma as a currency to buy their way out of accountability. Which leads us to a method that targets your actual competence. Method number 4 is manufactured incompetence. Most people will simply let a project fail if it is not technically their responsibility. They have no problem walking away from a mess. People with high-level systemic thinking cannot physically tolerate structural failure. Your mind naturally categorizes, organizes, and optimizes. The brain's executive function demands order. When you see a process breaking down, your neurobiology compels you to step in and fix it, because inefficiency and chaos cause you actual psychological friction. Manipulators know that if they do a job poorly enough, your brain will not allow you to let it stand. They control your actions by forcing you to take over. You experience this when a partner does a household chore so terribly that it creates more work, or when a coworker formats a report so poorly that it jeopardizes the project. They look at you helplessly and say, "You're just so much better at this than I am. I don't know how you do it." They flatter your intelligence while handing you their workload. You sigh, tell them to step aside, and do it yourself just to save time and ensure it is done correctly. Your inability to let things fail is not you being a rigid control freak. It is an advanced optimization drive. You see the fastest path to the best result. The downside is that you end up carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. You quietly resent the people around you, not realizing they are perfectly capable, but have successfully trained you to do their jobs for them. This brings us to the final and perhaps most insidious method. Method number 5 is the calibration shift. Most people measure the severity of an argument by the volume and the emotion behind it. If someone is yelling, they are the aggressor. If someone is quiet, they are the victim. People with logical processing try to evaluate the actual facts of the situation, regardless of how the data is delivered. When a manipulator speaks in a completely flat deadpan and calm tone while saying something outrageous or deeply insulting, it creates a cognitive short circuit. Your brain relies on tone to gauge threat levels. If their tone signals safety, but their words are a direct attack, your brain doubts its own reality testing. They control you by remaining perfectly still, while making you lose your balance. Imagine you are visibly upset because someone has repeatedly ignored your boundaries. Your heart rate is up. Your voice is slightly elevated because you are passionate and hurt. The manipulator looks at you with cold, empty calmness and says, "Why are you acting so hysterical right now? I am completely calm. You are being irrational." Instantly, you feel like the crazy one. You stop arguing your point and start apologizing for your tone. They win the argument without ever addressing the issue. Your emotional reaction in this scenario is not instability. It is a normal biological response to a massive discrepancy between reality and presentation. Your internal lie detector is going off. The downside is that to any outside observer, you will always look like the villain. You will look chaotic and emotional, while the manipulator successfully plays the role of the rational, calm victim. We need to completely stop defining intelligence by the degrees on your wall, the title on your business card, or the external achievements society praises. Those are merely metrics of compliance. They do not measure the depth of your cognition. The goal here is not to stroke your ego or to declare that you are intellectually superior to everyone in the room. The goal is to fundamentally shift the question you ask yourself when you feel out of place, exhausted, or confused. You need to stop asking, "Am I overreacting? Am I just too sensitive? Am I the problem?" You need to start asking, how is my brain currently being targeted precisely because of how deeply it processes information? When you understand the mechanics behind these silent tactics, they immediately lose their power over you. You stop absorbing the guilt that belongs to someone else. You stop shrinking your perception just to make other people feel comfortable. You realize that your tendency to overthink, to feel deeply, and to analyze everything was never a sign of your weakness. It was a weaponized reflection of your capacity. Take a moment and look back at the 5 points we just covered. Tell me in the comments down below, which number hit the hardest for you? The one that perfectly described a dynamic you haven't been able to put into words until today. If this video brought you clarity, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe to the channel. We will continue to decode the invisible systems around you. Stay observant.